"Take your hands off him," the Duke of Calder said, as Clara Whitmore knelt beside the convulsing nobleman. Around them, 200 guests watched Lord Pembroke struggle for breath beneath the chandeliers. Clara kept 2 fingers against his wrist. The pulse was slow, broken, and terribly familiar. "This is not apoplexy," she said. "Something has poisoned him." "Doctor." Gideon Vale stepped forward with a small amber bottle taken from Clara's reticule, the heart tincture she had prepared that morning. A murmur of disgust swept through the ballroom. Marcus looked at her as though every fear he possessed had just been proven true. "You entered this house as my aunt's companion," he said. "Not as a physician." He ordered the footman to remove her. Then champagne was poured for the midnight toast. As Clara was dragged toward the doors, she saw the same pale, crystalline crescent inside every raised glass. Had Lord Pembroke never been the only intended victim, "Do not drink"? Her cry struck the ballroom harder than the orchestra's final chord. Several ladies flinched, but no one lowered a glass. Marcus turned slowly, his expression sharpening. Clara twisted free of the younger footman. "Your Grace, look beneath the rims." The residue was there before the champagne was poured. Dr. Vale gave a weary sigh. "Sediment from an inferior bottle." "Nothing more. Sediment settles at the bottom," Clara replied. "It does not dry in an identical arc against 200 separate glasses." That hesitation saved them. Marcus lifted his glass toward the chandelier. A chalk-white crescent clung to the crystal where the champagne touched it. He examined the glass held by the gentleman beside him, then another upon a servant's tray. "Set them down," he commanded. Confusion rippled through the guests. "Every glass," Marcus said louder now. "No one drinks. Bar the doors." The musicians fell silent. Footmen hurried to obey while offended peers demanded explanations. Clara saw fear pass briefly across Dr. Vale's face before professional composure concealed it. Marcus crossed the ballroom toward her. He was tall enough to force her to lift her chin, but it was the restraint in his voice that made the air feel dangerous. "You knew what to look for. My father was an apothecary, and this was found in your possession." He took the amber bottle from Dr. Vale. Clara recognized her handwritten label, but not the cork. Hers had been tied with black silk because the stopper had loosened during the journey to Calder Hall. This cork was bare and pressed too deeply into the neck. "That bottle was taken from my room. You carried the reticule. I carried it downstairs. I did not examine it after Lady Agatha's maid returned it to me." Marcus's jaw tightened, a convenient distinction. Behind him, Lord Pembroke released a strangled breath. Clara moved instinctively, but Marcus blocked her path. "If his pulse continues to slow, he may not survive the hour. Dr. Vale is attending him." Dr. Vale called it apoplexy. The physician's face coloured. "And Miss Whitmore apparently requires neither university nor license to contradict me." "No university permits a woman to attend its medical lectures," Clara said. "That does not alter the rhythm of a dying man's heart." The room became painfully quiet. Marcus looked at her with something more complicated than anger. Then the ballroom doors shook beneath a guest's demand to be released. "No one leaves until every decanter bottle and glass has been secured," he ordered. "Miss Whitmore will wait in the blue morning room for the magistrate." As the footman escorted her away, Clara glanced toward Lord Pembroke. Dr. Vale bent over him, shielding the amber bottle from view. Yet another movement caught her attention, a grey-coated clerk slipping through the servants' passage with a thick leather ledger pressed beneath his arm. She recognized it. Lord Pembroke had carried that book into Calder Hall and refused to let any servant touch it. At dinner, he had told Marcus it contained accounts that must be read before the midnight toast. Now the man charged with guarding the ballroom doors was quietly allowing the ledger to disappear. The poisoned glasses had not merely been prepared to kill, they had been prepared to create enough terror for someone to steal whatever Lord Pembroke had come to reveal. The key turned behind Clara, leaving her alone with the ticking ormolu clock and the muffled uproar beyond the blue morning room. A terrace door stood partly concealed by velvet curtains. It opened onto the eastern lawn where darkness and a waiting line of carriages offered an easy escape. Clara crossed to it, touched the cold brass handle and withdrew her hand. Running would preserve her liberty for a few hours and destroy her name forever. More importantly, it would leave Lord Pembroke helpless among people who had either misunderstood his condition or deliberately caused it. She opened her reticule upon a writing desk. The contents had been rearranged. Her handkerchief lay beneath her purse instead of above it, and the small leather case containing her measuring spoon had been fastened with the buckle facing inward. Whoever had returned the reticule to her had taken time to search it. The amber bottle had contained a diluted preparation of foxglove prescribed for Lady Agatha's weakened heart. Clara had made it under her father's rules. Dry leaves weighed twice, liquid measured at eye-level dosage recorded before the bottle left the work table. For 12 years she had assisted him in the village apothecary, grinding bark, labelling tinctures, keeping case notes, and sitting beside patients whose pulses told truths their words could not. His knowledge had not become worthless merely because his daughter inherited it. The door opened sharply. Lady Agatha Calder entered with her silver-headed cane in one hand and Clara's cloak over the other arm. At 64, the Duke's widowed aunt possessed a delicate heart and the temperament of a field marshal. "My carriage is beneath the east windows," she said. "The terrace latch has never worked properly. We can reach the road before my nephew finishes insulting half the peerage." Clara almost smiled. "And tomorrow every newspaper will describe me as the poisoner who fled. Newspapers have described me as worse. Lord Pembroke may die if I leave." Lady Agatha's defiance faltered. She had hired Clara 6 months earlier, not because Clara possessed medical knowledge, but because she had been the only applicant who spoke to her without flattery or fear. Since then, they had read together, argued over politics, and quietly corrected the household accounts that Lady Agatha insisted no woman was expected to understand. "You would remain for a man who barely acknowledged you at dinner. I would remain because someone wanted him unable to speak." Clara handed back the cloak. Refusing escape might cost her the last chance to protect herself, but abandoning a patient had been the one act her father could never forgive. Lady Agatha studied her face, then lowered herself into a chair. "Tell me what you require. Where was my reticule between 10 and 11? In my sitting room. I sent Mary to fetch it when I felt that flutter beneath my ribs. And Mary returned it. She said she did. Was I ever near the glass pantry? You were reading Pembroke's memorandum aloud to me until 20 minutes before midnight." Clara became still. "What memorandum?" "The proposal for the Calder infirmary. He complained that its expenses had nearly doubled, though the number of patients had not." Before Clara could ask more, Marcus entered with Dr. Vale and a square-faced magistrate whose boots still carried mud from the road. His gaze moved from the terrace curtains to the cloak in Lady Agatha's lap. "You offered her your carriage," Marcus said. "I offered her the courtesy your house has denied her." The magistrate cleared his throat. Dr. Vale raised a hand as though restoring order to a sick room. "Lord Pembroke is resting," he announced. "I administered an emetic in time." Clara met his eyes. "Then you no longer believe he suffered apoplexy?" "I believe your tincture produced symptoms that initially resembled it." Marcus placed the amber bottle on the desk. "A footman claims he saw you leave the glass pantry shortly after 10:30. "At 10:30 she was with me," Lady Agatha said. "The servant is certain," Marcus replied, though uncertainty had entered his voice. Clara lifted the bottle without removing its stopper. Against the candlelight, the liquid inside appeared almost black. "My preparation was pale brown," she said. "This is concentrated." Dr. Vale's expression did not change. An accused woman disputing the strength of her own medicine proves very little. "Then examine the glasses. Foxglove leaves a brown-green deposit. The residue beneath those rims was white, and if I had poured this liquid into the champagne, the poison would be inside the decanters." Marcus looked toward the magistrate. "They are clean," he admitted. "Every decanter has been tested by Dr. Vale. Nothing was found." Clara set the bottle down carefully. The official accusation required her to have poisoned the wine, yet the wine contained no poison. Someone had treated every glass separately and had planted a different substance in her bottle to make one crime appear responsible for both. The evidence against her did not describe what had happened. It described what someone needed Marcus to believe. Marcus's attention remained on Clara long after the magistrate began questioning Lady Agatha. His suspicion had not disappeared, but it had acquired a boundary. He could no longer make the evidence fit his first conclusion without ignoring what lay before him. "What would you need to examine the residue?" he asked. Dr. Vale objected immediately. "Your Grace, permitting her to handle the evidence would compromise it. Then she will not handle it alone." Marcus ordered 6 glasses brought from the ballroom, 3 bearing the white crescent, and 3 unused glasses taken directly from the western cabinet. The magistrate recorded their origins before sealing the morning room doors. Clara requested warm water, 2 clean saucers, a silver spoon, strong black tea, and a sheet of plain writing paper. She scraped a few grains from the first contaminated glass onto the paper. The residue was colourless beneath the candlelight. Though massed together, it appeared white. It dissolved quickly in warm water. Clara added several drops of strong tea, and a cloudy ochre film formed across the saucer. Nothing appeared when she repeated the process with an unused glass. "My father treated a family after an apothecary's apprentice confused emetic tartar with cream of tartar," she said. "The powders resemble one another, but only one reacts strongly with the astringent matter in tea. He taught me never to trust appearance when a simple comparison could expose the difference." Dr. Vale leaned over the saucer. "Hardly a scientific demonstration." "It is measurable," Clara said. "The plain glass produces no change. The treated glass does. If you possess a better test, perform it." His mouth tightened. Marcus looked at the 6 glasses arranged across the desk. What would this amount do? The residue in one glass could produce violent sickness. A frail person might die from the strain. 200 guests drinking together would overwhelm every servant and physician in this house. And Lord Pembroke, his symptoms are different. The glass residue was intended to create confusion. The liquid in my bottle was intended to explain his collapse. The magistrate turned toward Dr. Vale. Could she be correct? After a pause, he answered, "It is possible that 2 preparations were involved." A footman arrived, with news that Lord Pembroke's pulse had strengthened. Clara felt the breath leave her slowly. Relief lasted only until the man added that Dr. Vale had forbidden anyone else to enter the bedchamber. Marcus noticed her reaction. "You believe he remains in danger?" "I believe a patient who cannot speak is entirely dependent upon the person interpreting his condition." The words struck Dr. Vale as an accusation, though Clara had not named him. He stepped closer to Marcus. "This woman has already contradicted me before your guests interfered with treatment and turned household sediment into a performance. Her confidence does not establish innocence." "No," Marcus said, "but neither does your irritation establish guilt." For the first time, Dr. Vale fell silent. Clara examined the remaining glasses without touching them. Each crescent began at precisely the same height. Someone had poured a measured quantity into every glass, tilted it, and allowed the liquid to dry before the champagne was added. The work would have required privacy, patience, and access to the locked pantry. She asked to see the trays upon which the glasses had been carried. The butler brought in the first mahogany tray. Clara crouched beside it, following a faint white trail toward the brass handle. A narrow gap separated the handle plate from the wood. Something pale had been pressed inside. "Do not move it," she warned. The magistrate used tweezers from Clara's measuring case and withdrew a tiny folded triangle of paper. One corner was stained by the same white powder. The fold was distinctive. Top edge turned twice sides, tucked inward, point inserted beneath the flap. It was the method dispensaries used to package single medicinal doses. Clara resisted the impulse to take it. Instead, she directed the magistrate to unfold it over a clean sheet of paper. On the inner surface, a stamped mark appeared beneath the powder. C.I. 47. Marcus read it twice. Calder Infirmary. Doctor. Vale's gaze moved from the packet to Clara. The look lasted only a moment, but she recognized it. It was not the contempt he had shown when she challenged his diagnosis. It was calculation. "You have seen this numbering system before?" Marcus asked her. "Lady Agatha and I reviewed the infirmary proposal this evening. Its dispensary expenses were listed by batch number. 47 appeared 3 times in the same month. That could be an accounting error, Doctor," Vale said. "Then the infirmary ledger would tell us what batch 47 contained, who ordered it, and how much should remain." Marcus summoned the grey-coated clerk who had guarded Lord Pembroke's book. The servant sent to find him returned 10 minutes later, pale and empty-handed. The clerk had vanished. So had the infirmary ledger. But beneath the service stairs the footman had discovered Lord Pembroke's leather strap cleanly severed, not torn during the confusion, but cut with a blade. The poisoning had required advanced preparation. The false bottle had required access to Clara's room. The stolen ledger had required an accomplice waiting for the ballroom to erupt. Nothing that had happened that night was accidental. The ballroom doors remained locked until Marcus addressed the guests shortly before 2 in the morning. Clara stood behind a screen in the adjoining music room, permitted to listen but not to enter. "Doctor." Vale faced the assembly beside the Duke, holding one of the contaminated glasses as though it belonged to him. "My examination has established that an emetic preparation was applied to the crystal before the champagne was poured," he announced. His Grace's prompt intervention prevented serious injury. No mention was made of Clara's warning, her comparison, or the tea that still clouded the saucer in the morning room. Lady Agatha gripped her cane. "That man has stolen your discovery before 200 witnesses." "Let him," Clara murmured. "You cannot mean that. If the guests believe the danger is contained, they will leave without trampling servants or destroying evidence. I need the packet preserved more than I need their applause." From the ballroom came questions about Lord Pembroke and demands that the person responsible be named. "Doctor." Vale allowed the whispers surrounding Clara to answer for him. Marcus did not. "No charge has been established," he said. "Anyone repeating an accusation as fact will answer to me." The warning silenced the loudest voices, though it could not erase the glances directed toward the screen. Clara had become visible enough to blame, and remained too socially insignificant to defend. When the final carriage departed, Marcus found her in the service corridor, examining the glass pantry door. The lock showed no damage. Only the butler, housekeeper, and senior footman possessed keys. "You permitted Vale to claim your work," he said. Correcting him publicly would have produced an argument, not the truth. "You value the distinction. Your guests value confidence. Poison does not." A reluctant trace of amusement touched his mouth and disappeared so quickly she nearly mistook it for exhaustion. "The magistrate believes the missing clerk may still be on the estate," Marcus said. "His name is Elias Bell. He served as assistant bookkeeper at the infirmary for 3 years. Who appointed him, Vale recommended him." Clara looked toward the ballroom. Dr. Vale stood at its far end, directing servants as contaminated glasses were placed into locked crates. "Does Dr. Vale control the infirmary dispensary?" "He supervises its medical purchases. Pembroke controlled its charitable accounts." Before Clara could answer, a young maid emerged from the shadows near the linen stairs. Mary Finch's face was colourless, and angry red marks crossed both hands. Lady Agatha moved toward her. "Where have you been? Locked in the washroom, my lady." Mary explained that a grey-coated man had stopped her while she carried Clara's reticule downstairs. He claimed Lady Agatha had collapsed in the West Gallery and ordered Mary to fetch hot water. She had placed the reticule on a console for less than a minute. When she returned, it appeared untouched. Later, after the alarm began, someone seized her from behind and forced her into the washroom. "Did you see his face?" Marcus asked. Mary shook her head. "But I heard him speak to another man. He said the ledger must reach the infirmary before daylight." The magistrate stepped from the pantry. "Why did you conceal this?" Mary began to cry. "My brother works in the infirmary kitchens. The man said Owen would lose his position if I spoke." The magistrate ordered a footman to take her into custody. "No," Clara said. Every face turned toward her. She has given you information that places her near my reticule, Clara continued. If she intended to protect herself, she would have remained silent. Examine the marks on her hands. They are fresh abrasions from striking a locked door, not stains from handling medicine. She may still have assisted whoever replaced your bottle, the magistrate said. Then keep her under Lady Agatha's supervision. A frightened maid placed among prisoners will tell you whatever she thinks earns release. Marcus studied Mary's injured hands and countermanded the magistrate's order. The maid would remain in Lady Agatha's rooms with a guard outside. When Mary had gone, he turned to Clara. Her confession weakens your defence. Until now, you could claim no one had access to the reticule. An innocent woman's silence would not make me innocent. You protected her knowing that. I told the truth knowing that. Something shifted in Marcus's expression. For the first time, he looked at Clara without measuring her against an accusation. His gaze settled upon her as if he had discovered a fact for which none of his established judgments had prepared him. "We ride to the infirmary at first light," he said. "You will examine the dispensary records beside me." Clara returned to the blue morning room to collect her cloak. A folded note lay beneath it, though the room had been empty when she left. The message contained only one sentence. "Withdraw your claim about batch 47 before breakfast, or Mary Finch will hang for poisoning the Duke's guests." Clara carried the threatening note directly to Marcus. He read it without touching the paper, then summoned the magistrate to seal it inside a leather folio. "You could have destroyed this and withdrawn your claim," he said. "That is what its author expected. You are not easily frightened. I am frightened, Your Grace. I simply dislike being instructed what to do with it." At first, like Marcus's carriage left Calder Hall for the infirmary with Clara Dr. Vale, and the magistrate inside. No one spoke during the 2-mile journey. The threatening note rested upon the magistrate's knees, while Dr. Vale watched Clara with the calm patience of a man waiting for a fever to break. Calder Infirmary occupied a grey stone building beyond the market square. Its matron met them beneath the portico and led them through wards already crowded with labourers, widows, and feverish children. Clara felt Marcus observing her as she paused to steady an elderly patient who had slipped against the wall. She guided the woman back to her bench before continuing. The dispensary door was locked. Dr. Vale produced the key. Inside, shelves rose from floor to ceiling, each filled with numbered jars and stoppered bottles. The space assigned to batch 47 was empty. The matron brought the purchase register, according to its pages. 12 ounces of emetic tartar had arrived 6 days earlier. 9 ounces had supposedly been distributed to the wards, though no corresponding patient orders appeared in the treatment book. The remaining 3 ounces had been released upon a private requisition. Dr. Vale unfolded the paper. Clara saw her own name before anyone spoke. For the urgent treatment of Lady Agatha Calder. 3 ounces from batch 47, Clara Whitmore. The signature resembled hers closely enough to make her stomach tighten. Even the final stroke of the E curved upward as hers did. Marcus placed the requisition beside the letter she had written for Lady Agatha the previous evening. The hand appears identical. "The shape is copied," Clara said. "The pressure is not. I write with a damaged middle finger, so my downstrokes weaken near the bottom. These grow heavier." The magistrate examined both sheets. "A subtle distinction." "A convenient one," Dr. Vale said. The matron opened a smaller record book. A woman collected the powder 4 days ago. She wore a grey cloak and gave Miss Whitmore's name. "I had not yet arrived at Calder Hall 4 days ago," Clara said. "You were staying in the village," Vale replied. "Less than a mile from here." Marcus looked at her. She had spent that afternoon settling her father's final debt with the landlord alone. Without a witness who would remember the exact hour, the matron asked Clara to remove her cloak before entering the medicine store. As she lifted it from Clara's shoulders, something struck the stone floor. A brass key. The infirmary seal was stamped into its bow. "That opens the dispensary passage," the matron whispered. Clara stared at it. Lady Agatha had brought the cloak to the blue morning room, where it had rested unattended, before Clara found the threat beneath it. The magistrate's expression hardened. You possess the means to enter both the dispensary and the glass pantry. A master key of this pattern opens old Calder locks. I have never seen it before. A commotion sounded in the courtyard. 2 attendants carried in Elias Bell, the missing grey-coated clerk. He was alive but barely conscious, his breathing shallow and his pupils contracted. One hand remained closed around a torn scrap of paper. The magistrate eased it free. It bore 3 lines in Clara's handwriting, inviting Bell to meet her behind the infirmary before dawn and promising payment for Lord Pembroke's ledger. This forgery was less careful. The letters resembled hers, but several were formed with habits no practiced writer could easily suppress. Whoever had copied her hand understood appearance, not movement. Bell stirred when Clara approached. "Miss Whitmore," he rasped. Every person in the room heard him say her name before he slipped back into unconsciousness. Clara reached for his wrist, but Marcus caught her arm. No. The single word held more than caution. It carried the return of every suspicion she had forced him to question. "He has been given laudanum," she said. "Too much of it. If he is left upon his back, his breathing may fail." Dr. Vale ordered the attendants to turn Bell onto his side, presenting Clara's instruction as his own. The magistrate took possession of the key, the forged requisition, and Bell's note. "Your Grace, I can no longer justify allowing Miss Whitmore freedom of movement." Marcus's hand fell from her arm. For one moment regret showed plainly in his face. Then duty, or fear disguised as duty, closed over it. "You will remain in the infirmary's consultation room under guard," he said. Patients and servants watched as Clara was escorted through the corridor. The humiliation was quieter than the ballroom accusation, and therefore more complete. Marcus had begun to see her clearly, yet when the cost of trusting her became real, he had chosen control again. Near the consultation room, Clara caught the sharp odour of lamp oil. A glossy line crept from beneath the archive door and disappeared under a stack of bundled linens. She stopped. The accounts proving what batch 47 had been used to conceal were stored in that room. The morning board meeting would soon fill the adjoining chamber with every infirmary trustee. "Open that door," she told the guard. "Someone has soaked the archive in oil." He tightened his grip upon her arm. Then a ribbon of black smoke curled beneath the threshold. Clara shouted, "Not water. The oil will carry the flames along the floor." The guard hesitated, still holding her arm. Smoke thickened beneath the archive door and climbed the wall in dark folds. Marcus appeared at the far end of the corridor with the magistrate and Dr. Vale behind him. "Release her," he ordered. "Your Grace, she remains under accusation, and she recognized the fire before any of us." "Release her." The guard obeyed. Clara seized a wool blanket from the linen stack and thrust it into Marcus's hands. "Smother the oil outside the door. Do not open it yet. The archive shares a wall with the dispensary, and the spirit bottles will ignite if the fire reaches them." Dr. Vale objected. "The records must be recovered immediately. If that door opens now, the rush of air may set the entire room alight." Marcus turned to the gathering attendants. "You heard Miss Whitmore. Bring sand from the courtyard. Move every patient from this passage to the western ward. Follow her instructions without question." The command travelled through the building. For the first time, Clara's knowledge carried the authority of his rank. She directed attendants to close the dispensary shutters and remove the volatile medicines through its outer door. Marcus and 2 porters pressed blankets over the burning trail, while others poured sand across the stones. Inside, the archive glass shattered. A sheet of flame flashed behind the transom. "The ceiling will carry it toward the women's ward," the matron cried. Clara studied the smoke escaping along the upper moulding. "Close the ward doors and open the courtyard windows. Keep everyone low. The cleanest air will be near the floor." A patient appeared through the smoke, disoriented and coughing. Marcus crossed the corridor before anyone else moved, lifted the man's arm over his shoulder and carried him toward the courtyard. When he returned, soot streaked his face and one cuff had burned through. Clara caught his wrist. The skin beneath the cloth was reddened but unbroken. "I am able to continue," he said. That was not a request for permission. Their eyes met. Even amid the alarm, something warm and startled passed through his expression. Then a violent crack came from the archive. The door buckled outward. "Now," Clara said. "It has already drawn air through the broken transom." Marcus kicked the weakened panel beside the lock. The wood split on his second blow. Men with sand rushed forward, but Clara stopped them from entering until the first flames had been smothered. Smoke filled the archive so completely that the shelves appeared only as black shapes. Most of the ledgers were burning. The fire had begun beneath the desk, where the current accounts were stored, not near the older books or the coal grate. Someone had piled oil-soaked linen around the records from the previous 12 months. This was set deliberately, the magistrate said. Clara wrapped a wet cloth around her mouth and entered far enough to drag a half-burned document box away from the flames. Marcus followed despite her warning and lifted the heavier end. Together they pulled it into the corridor. Inside lay several charred invoices, a trustee's seal, and the draft of a loan agreement. The upper half had burned away, but the surviving portion named Calder Infirmary as borrower and Marcus's estate as guarantor for £30,000. Marcus read the figure with disbelief. "I have never agreed to this." "The board intended to ask for your signature this morning," Dr. Vale said. "The expansion cannot proceed without it." Clara examined 3 surviving invoices. Each charged the infirmary for batch 47. The first came from a London chemist. The second came from a local supplier called Harcourt Medical Company. The third bore no supplier's address at all. All 3 demanded payment for the same 12 ounces. Pembroke discovered that the infirmary paid repeatedly for medicines received only once, she said. The stolen ledger proved it. The poisoning prevented him from speaking, and the fire was meant to erase every duplicate account before the trustees arrived. "Doctor." Vale's face remained composed. "An attractive theory, but the missing clerk named you before he collapsed. Then we keep him alive long enough to explain why." They hurried back to Elias Bell. His breathing had weakened. Clara ordered strong coffee, mustard cloths, and constant movement of his arms and legs. "Doctor." Vale called the measures crude, but Marcus placed himself beside the bed and followed Clara's directions until Bell's breathing deepened. The clerk's eyes opened briefly. "Ledger," Marcus said. "Where is it?" Bell's lips moved without sound. Clara leaned close. "Not one book," he whispered. Pembroke made a copy. "Where?" "The trustees' packets." His eyelids fluttered. "Sent before the ball." The board meeting had been transferred to Calder Hall because of the fire. 9 trustees would arrive at noon, each carrying a sealed packet prepared by Pembroke. One packet contained duplicate account pages, though Bell did not know which. Dr. Vale stepped away from the bed. "Then the meeting must be cancelled." "No," Clara said. "If it is cancelled, whoever arranged this will have time to find the correct packet and destroy it." The magistrate stared at her. "You propose gathering every suspect in one room. I propose letting the person who needs that copy reveal which packet contains it." Marcus looked at the burning archive, the forged papers condemning Clara, and the injured clerk whose life now depended upon her judgment. Then he removed the infirmary key from the magistrate's evidence pouch and placed it in Clara's hand. "The trustees arrive in 4 hours," he said. "Tell me what must be done." Clara closed her fingers around the infirmary key. "First, Lord Pembroke's condition must be guarded by someone Dr. Vale cannot dismiss," she said. "Second, Elias Bell must not be left alone. Third, no trustee's packet may enter Calder Hall without its arrival being recorded." Marcus issued the orders without altering a word. The magistrate assigned 2 constables to Bell's room, while the matron selected a retired naval surgeon from the Western Ward to watch Pembroke. "Doctor." Vale objected to sharing authority over his patient, but Marcus silenced him with a look. During the carriage ride back to Calder Hall, soot darkened Marcus's coat, and the burn at his wrist had begun to swell. Clara took a clean strip of linen from her reticule. "Give me your hand." He obeyed, though the simple act appeared to cost him more than commanding an entire household. She wrapped the burn loosely. "My mother died in a room full of men who claimed certainty. he said. One of them had no medical training. He doubled her laudanum because she continued to suffer. Clara tied the linen. And when I contradicted Vale, you saw him instead of me. Yes, the admission contained no request for forgiveness. I used her death to justify humiliating you, he continued. Grief explains the mistake. It does not excuse it. Clara looked toward the passing hedgerows. My father once exposed a tainted well on a baronet's estate. The baronet accused him of frightening the tenants to sell medicine. By the time the fever proved my father right, 3 people had died, and his reputation had already been ruined. Rank does not make a man correct, but it often allows him to remain wrong longer. Marcus's hand turned beneath hers until his fingers briefly touched her wrist. I do not intend to remain wrong, he said. At Calder Hall, Mary Finch waited in Lady Agatha's sitting room. The maid confirmed that 3 infirmary packets had arrived the previous afternoon. 1 belonged to Marcus, 1 to Lord Pembroke, and 1 to Lady Agatha as an honorary trustee. Each had been tied with a different ribbon. Lady Agatha's was blue, Mary said. Miss Whitmore read the proposal aloud from it. Clara remembered the thick memorandum and its strangely stiff cover. Pembroke's summary had ended after 12 pages, though the thread binding continued through several apparently blank folds. Where is it now? Lady Agatha pointed toward her escritoire. Dr. Vale requested all the infirmary papers after Pembroke collapsed. I gave him the Duke's packet from the library, but I refused to surrender mine. The blue-ribboned packet remained beneath a stack of correspondence. Its seal was unbroken. Clara placed it beside the empty batch 47 wrapper. Both papers contained the same faint blue fibres, and both had been folded with their corners tucked inward. The wrapper had not come from Clara's supplies. It had been torn from infirmary stationery. Using a letter knife, she carefully separated the stiff cover of Lady Agatha's memorandum. A second row of stitches appeared beneath the first. Clara cut only the outer thread. 6 narrow account sheets slid onto the desk. Pembroke had copied the entries by hand. They showed repeated payments for medicines that had never reached the wards. Batch 47 had been billed 3 times. 2 other consignments had been charged under the names of patients who had died months before the listed treatment dates. Each purchase carried Dr. Vale's medical authorization. Each payment had been approved by Elias Bell. The signatures make Bell appear responsible for releasing the money, Marcus said. Which explains why he was drugged instead of killed, Clara replied. Alive and confused, he can be blamed. Dead, he becomes suspicious. At the bottom of the final page, Pembroke had written a single line. Compare the supplier drafts with G.V. Private deposits before the trustees execute Calder's guarantee. The initials pointed toward Gideon Vale, but the copied accounts alone could not prove who had received the money. Pembroke's original ledger, or the bank drafts, would still be required. Mary examined the blue ribbon. I saw one like this in the grey-coated gentleman's pocket. Bell's pocket? Marcus asked. No. The other man, the one who sent me away from Miss Whitmore's reticule. I saw the ribbon when he reached inside his coat. Could you identify him? Mary's face tightened. If he spoke, I would know his voice. The alliance between the evidence and the witness was fragile but real. The wrapper connected the ballroom poison to infirmary stationery. Pembroke's copy established the duplicate payments. Mary could identify the person who gained access to Clara's medicine. Bell, if he recovered, could explain the accounts. Marcus folded the sheets inside fresh paper and sealed them with his signet. I will place these in the iron deed chest. No, Clara said. Anyone watching us will expect that. Leave the sealed bundle visible in the library, but put the account sheets somewhere no clerk or physician would search. Lady Agatha smiled. My embroidery basket. No rational man willingly opens it. Marcus almost laughed. He placed blank paper inside the sealed bundle and gave the originals to his aunt. A knock sounded. Dr. Vale entered before anyone invited him. His coat had been changed, but a faint smear of soot remained near one cuff. The trustees have begun to arrive, he said. I assume Miss Whitmore will be confined before the meeting. His gaze passed over Mary, the empty wrapper, the cut binding thread, and finally the blue ribbon lying across Clara's hand. The pleasant expression never left his face, but Clara knew from the stillness in his eyes that he understood exactly what they had found. Marcus stepped between Vale and the writing desk. "Miss Whitmore will attend the trustees' meeting." "A woman accused of poisoning those trustees?" Vale asked. "Your judgment may be admired as loyalty, your grace, but no reasonable man will mistake it for impartiality." The first carriages were already arriving. Within 20 minutes, 9 trustees occupied the library, their sealed packets arranged before them. News of the fire and Clara's alleged crimes had reached them first. They regarded her as though poison might pass through her shadow. Marcus began with the duplicate payments. At his signal, the magistrate opened the sealed bundle left visibly upon the library table. Blank sheets fell out. Vale's eyebrows rose. "Is this the evidence upon which Miss Whitmore has built her accusation?" "The originals were protected elsewhere," Marcus said. Lady Agatha left the room and returned moments later without her embroidery basket. A footman found it in the small parlour fireplace. Its wicker frame had been broken, the fabric torn away, and every paper inside reduced to curling black fragments. Mary Finch had vanished as well. The constable guarding Lady Agatha's rooms claimed another officer had produced a written order transferring Mary to the magistrate's custody. The order bore Marcus's seal. By the time the forgery was discovered, the hired carriage carrying Mary had passed through the southern gate. Clara felt the structure they had built collapse one support at a time. The copied accounts were gone. Their witness had been taken. Elias Bell remained too weak to give a sworn statement. The original ledger had never been recovered. Dr. Vale placed the forged requisition for batch 47 before the trustees. Beside it, he laid Bell's note, the dispensary key found in Clara's cloak, and the threatening message about Mary. "The simplest explanation is often the correct one," he said. Miss Whitmore possessed knowledge of medicine's access to Calder Hall and a personal grievance against the medical profession she could never enter. She obtained emetic tartar under a forged order, poisoned the glasses, and attempted to silence Lord Pembroke when he discovered irregularities created by her accomplice. "Why would she stop the guests from drinking?" Lady Agatha demanded. "Because Pembroke collapsed too early. Panic overcame calculation. The trustees murmured their approval. Vale had transformed every act of courage into proof of guilt." Clara looked toward Marcus. He had believed a simpler version of the same story only hours before. Now he stood alone before men whose confidence, funding, and political support sustained the infirmary and much of his public influence. The senior trustee pushed the loan agreement toward him. "Sign the guarantee, remove Miss Whitmore, and permit the magistrate to complete his duty. The board will consider last night an unfortunate domestic scandal." Marcus did not touch the pen. "If I sign £30,000 passes through accounts no one here can explain. If you refuse construction, stops creditors descend upon the infirmary, and this board petitions to remove you as patron." Marcus lifted the loan agreement and tore it through the centre. The sound silenced the room. "Until the accounts are proven honest, Calder will guarantee nothing," he said. "I will personally pay the patient's food wages and necessary medicines for 3 months. If the board removes me for refusing to finance theft, it may explain that decision publicly. The pledge would cost thousands, more damaging still." It placed his reputation against the word of a fashionable physician and 9 respected trustees. The magistrate rose. "Your Grace, financial generosity cannot obstruct the law. Miss Whitmore must be taken before the county court." Marcus removed the Calder signet from his hand and set it upon the table. "I offer my estate as surety for her appearance. She will remain at Calder Hall under my responsibility. If she flees, I forfeit the bond you name." Clara stared at him. He had once denied her the right to touch a dying man. Now he risked property, and standing upon her refusal to run, the magistrate reluctantly accepted a bond of £10,000. Clara would avoid the county jail, but she remained formally accused. Vale had won the room. Trustees departed convinced that Marcus had been manipulated by an ambitious companion. When only Lady Agatha, Marcus, and Clara remained, exhaustion pressed against Clara's chest. Their evidence was ash. Mary was gone. The vote had been postponed for only 48 hours, after which the board could execute the loan without Marcus if it removed him as patron. Marcus stood beside the cold fireplace. "I should have trusted you before the evidence forced me to." "You trusted me when the evidence appeared to forbid it," Clara said. "That matters more." She bent to examine the burned embroidery basket. Among the ashes lay one strip from Pembroke's copied account. The writing had vanished, but 2 parallel stitch holes remained along its edge. Vale's words returned to her. "The missing ledger contains only correction entries. It cannot support this fantasy of theft." Clara straightened. "No one has recovered the ledger," she said. Marcus looked at her. "And Bell has not described its contents." Vale had not merely claimed that the ledger would clear him. He had called its disputed payments correction entries, the precise explanation written beside the triple charges in Pembroke's hidden copy. He could know that wording only if he had read either the concealed pages or the stolen original. "He is arrogant because he believes every document capable of contradicting him has been destroyed," Clara said. "So we give him one more document to destroy, with what inside it, a lie he cannot resist correcting." She picked up the blue ribbon and wound it around the blank bundle. "At the reconvened meeting, we announce that Pembroke's original ledger has been recovered. We describe one entry incorrectly and let Vale attack it. To discredit us, he will have to reveal knowledge no innocent man could possess." Marcus understood. "And while he believes the false ledger is our only proof, we find Mary protect Bell and obtain the bank drafts Pembroke told us to compare." Clara placed the ribboned bundle in the centre of the table. This time they would not chase Vale's lies. They would make him choose one he could never withdraw. The hired carriage that carried Mary Finch through the southern gate had been booked under the name Harcourt Medical Company. Its driver returned alone and claimed his passenger had left at the old Bellamy toll house. Marcus, Clara, and the magistrate found Mary locked inside its cellar. She was frightened and bruised, but alive. Her captor had kept his face covered and demanded that she sign a statement accusing Clara. Mary had refused. "He spoke when he thought I was asleep," she said. "It was the same voice that sent me away from Miss Whitmore's reticule." Marcus stationed Mary and her brother under the protection of 2 constables. Elias Bell was moved from the infirmary to Calder Hall, where the retired naval surgeon remained beside him. The contaminated glasses, batch 47 wrapper, forged requisition, false key, altered tincture bottle, and threatening note were each sealed separately in the magistrate's chest. At Clara's request, Marcus invited not only the trustees but every guest who had witnessed her public accusation. If her name had been damaged before 200 people, the truth would not be repaired in private. 48 hours after the poisoned toast, the ballroom filled again. The musicians' platform had become a place for evidence. The false ledger wrapped in blue ribbon rested at its centre. Mary waited behind Lady Agatha. Elias Bell sat near the magistrate, pale but conscious. A cashier from the Calder Bank guarded a locked dispatch case containing the original supplier drafts. Dr. Vale entered last. He surveyed the witnesses and smiled. "An impressive theatre, Your Grace. But spectacle will not transform a poisoner into a physician." Before Marcus could answer, Vale addressed the assembly. He repeated the evidence against Clara, the requisition bearing her signature, the dispensary key found in her cloak, Bell's note in her hand, and her admitted expertise with dangerous medicines. Then he pointed toward the ribboned book. "We are told Lord Pembroke's missing ledger has miraculously returned. I suggest Miss Whitmore produced it herself after failing to make her copied pages survive examination." His certainty spread through the room. Several trustees nodded. Clara stepped onto the platform. "The requisition was dated 4 days before I entered Calder Hall," she said. "Its writer copied the shape of my letters but not the weakness in my downstrokes caused by an old injury. The key found in my cloak was newly cut. It bears no wear inside its teeth, while the dispensary lock contains years of iron residue, and the amber bottle was not mine. My stopper was tied with black silk. Mary Finch later found the original bottle behind the console, where my reticule had been left. The magistrate displayed both bottles. One contained Clara's pale preparation. The planted bottle held a concentration strong enough to endanger Lord Pembroke. Vale barely glanced at them. Details arranged by a woman with every opportunity to arrange them. Then let us consider opportunity, Clara said. Every poisoned glass was treated separately inside a locked pantry. The white residue came from batch 47, packaged in infirmary stationery and folded by the dispensary method. A man carrying blue ribbon from that stationery gained access to my reticule. Vale turned toward Mary, and this maid now claims she remembers a voice after 2 days of coaching. Mary trembled, but she stepped forward. No one coached me. You told me Lady Agatha had collapsed. You threatened my brother. And when you entered her sitting room yesterday, I heard the voice again. A murmur travelled through the ballroom. Vale's composure did not break. The frightened imagination of a servant. Clara placed one of Pembroke's surviving invoices beside the empty batch 47 wrapper. The infirmary paid 3 times for the same medicine. Similar duplicate charges appear throughout the missing ledger. Lord Pembroke marked the batch 47 correction on page 86. Vale laughed. No, Miss Whitmore. Batch 47 appears on page 112. Page 86 contains the winter mortality accounts. The corrected charge was written in red and initialed by Bell, not placed in the margin as you clearly suppose. The room became silent. Clara did not look at the false ledger. She looked at Marcus. They had never opened it because it contained nothing but blank paper. No one had told Vale a page number, the colour of the correction, or where Bell's initials appeared. You are correct, Clara said. Those are the exact details. A flicker of triumph crossed his face before he understood. The ledger on this table is false, she continued. We never recovered the original. Mr. Bell had not described its pages until this moment. Yet you know its contents well enough to correct me. Vale's gaze moved toward the doors. The constables closed them. Clara continued before he could recover. She showed how the ballroom poisoning had created the confusion needed to steal the ledger, how her altered medicine had been used to frame Pembroke's collapse, and how the infirmary fire had targeted only the current financial records. She laid the forged loan agreement beside 3 invoices charging Calder for a single delivery. The scheme required Lord Pembroke to be silent, Elias Bell to appear guilty, and me to carry the poison, she said. But its purpose was money. £30,000 guaranteed by Calder would have entered the same path as every false medicine payment. Vale lifted his chin. You have shown irregular accounts and offered malicious interpretations. You have not shown that 1 farthing reached me. No, Clara said. Not yet. The Calder Bank cashier carried his dispatch case to the platform. Before the trustees, he unlocked it and removed 6 original drafts bearing the infirmary seal. Each had passed through Harcourt Medical Company before being deposited into one private account. Clara turned the first draft face down. The endorsement remained hidden against the table. Vale's confidence finally wavered. The cashier placed his hand upon the paper, ready to reveal the name written beneath it. The cashier turned over the first draft, pay to the order of Gideon Vale. 5 more followed, each bearing Vale's endorsement and the Calder Bank stamp. The payments totalled more than £11,000. Harcourt Medical Company possessed no warehouse employees or medical licence. It existed only as a name through which infirmary money entered Vale's private account. Vale's face emptied of colour. Those were professional fees, he said. For medicines that never arrived, Clara asked. For patients already dead when you claimed to treat them. The cashier confirmed that the drafts had remained in the bank's custody since payment. Their numbers corresponded exactly with Pembroke's copied entries and the surviving invoices recovered from the fire. Elias Bell rose unsteadily. Dr. Vale ordered me to approve the duplicate charges, he said. At first he called them corrections. When Lord Pembroke began comparing the accounts, Vale threatened to blame every payment on me. Bell explained that Vale had obtained a key patterned for the old Calder locks and forced him to enter the glass pantry before the ball. The emetic tartar was dissolved, measured into the glasses, and allowed to dry. The mass sickness would create enough confusion for Bell to steal Pembroke's ledger. Vale had prepared a different poison for Pembroke. Concentrated foxglove placed inside Clara's bottle. He chose Clara because she had made Lady Agatha's genuine tincture, understood medicines, and possessed neither rank nor a professional license. Vale had copied her handwriting from a dosage card taken during one of his visits to Lady Agatha. When Pembroke collapsed before the toast, Vale told me to take the ledger immediately. Bell continued. I obeyed. I gave it to him at the infirmary. Then he forced laudanum between my teeth and left me in the yard. The ledger, the magistrate asked. He carried it into the archive before the fire. The original had been destroyed, but its destruction no longer protected him. Pembroke's hidden copy established the false charges. The bank drafts established where the money went. The batch 47 wrapper linked infirmary supplies to the ballroom. The 2 medicine bottles proved Clara's preparation had been exchanged. Mary's testimony established how Vale reached her reticule. Bell's account explained the stolen book, while Vale's own correction of the false page number proved he had read it. Clara faced the guests who had once watched her dragged toward the doors. Vale needed the £30,000 guarantee signed before Lord Pembroke could expose him. Pembroke was poisoned to silence him. The guests were to be made violently ill so the ledger could disappear. I was chosen because society was prepared to believe that a knowledgeable woman must also be a dangerous one. Vale moved suddenly toward the terrace. The constables seized him before he reached the doors. The magistrate arrested him for attempted poisoning, forgery, kidnapping, arson, and theft from the infirmary. As he was taken away, no guest spoke in his defence. Marcus stepped onto the platform. What happened to Miss Whitmore began with Vale's crimes, he said, but her public humiliation also required my failure. He named each wrong, without softening it. He had silenced her beside Lord Pembroke, treated her knowledge as insolence, ordered her confinement, permitted Vale to claim her discovery, and trusted prejudice when courage was required. Miss Whitmore saved every person in this ballroom, he said. She saved the infirmary patients, exposed the theft, and preserved the lives of the witnesses used against her. Calder owes her more than gratitude. I owe her an apology that no private conversation could repair. Before the same 200 witnesses, the magistrate withdrew every accusation against Clara and cancelled Marcus's bond. The trustees dismissed Vale, voided the loan, and elected Lady Agatha temporary chairwoman. Bell received leniency for testifying, but was required to assist in reconstructing the accounts. Mary and Owen were given protected positions independent of the trustees Vale had controlled. Lord Pembroke recovered slowly. His first signed statement confirmed that he had prepared the copied accounts because he feared the original ledger would be stolen. Vale's property was later seized to repay the infirmary. His medical license was revoked before his criminal trial, and the associates who had helped conceal the false company were charged with fraud. Marcus offered Clara the position of superintendent of a new dispensary funded by Calder. She refused. I will not exchange dependence upon one powerful man for dependence upon a kinder one, she told him. So he altered the offer. The dispensary was placed within an independent charitable trust. Clara received a salary determined by its board authority over its medicine accounts and a lease to the adjoining house in her own name. It was called the Whitmore Dispensary, not Calder's. Only after she signed those terms did Marcus ask whether he might court her. You may ask again, after I have decided whether you can follow instructions, she replied. 6 months later, the restored infirmary held its reopening celebration in the same ballroom. Champagne filled 200 crystal glasses, but no one raised one until Clara inspected the first tray. Marcus stood beside her waiting. Well, he asked. Clara lifted her glass. They are safe. Every guest followed her lead. Marcus did not take the glass from her hand or speak for her. He merely offered his arm, leaving her free to refuse it. Clara looked toward the doors through which she had once been dragged in disgrace. Then she placed her hand upon his sleeve, not because she needed his protection, but because he had finally learned to stand beside her without taking her place. Together, they led the toast.